Hi, everybody. Dennis Prager here. Welcome to my home and this week's Fireside Chat. And we'll open up with Schumann's Second Symphony, Second Movement. Enjoy for a moment. Schumann was in about the 1840s, I'd say he wrote this. He wrote 4 symphonies. This is the second, as I said. It's a very lively movement. I always pick the lively ones for this. I would love you to love classical music. Anyway, I usually smoke a cigar at the Fireside Chat, but when I'm at my desk, I alternate between cigar and pipe. Ever since I was about 16 years of age. I love the taste of tobacco. There's no inhaling like cigarettes. I should once just do a whole thing on the difference because there's so much nonsense and even malicious lying about cigars and pipes that has nothing to do with the truth. And by the way, it's very sad because the tobacco I'm smoking now is called Vintage Syrian. It's Syrian Latakia. It's a special type of tobacco. There are a lot of types. And it's not available anymore because you can't get anything out of Syria, basically, and so much has been destroyed. I mean, it's hardly one of the great tragedies of the Syrian tragedy, but I'm just mentioning it. Anyway, welcome to the broadcast. I want to open up about healthcare because it's in the news. But I don't talk policy, so don't get turned off. I'm not a policy wonk. There are, and we need policy wonks. That's just not my thing. I divide the world of those who think there are tree people and there are forest people. I'm a forest person. I'm not obsessed with the trees. I'm obsessed with the forests, the big picture. That's just the way I think, so that's the reason. But I want to give you a big picture idea on this pre-existing insurance problem. Let me ask you a question. If you sold insurance policies to people for their cars, you're an insurance company, or a small insurance company, and you make a living selling car insurance. Now, let me ask you this. If people could buy your car insurance after they had a car crash, would you go out of business? Would you thrive? Which one? The answer is you'd go out of business because if that's what people could do, nobody would buy car insurance until they got into a crash. Then I'll buy the insurance and bravo, the company pays for my damaged car. Is that a great deal or what? That's what pre-existing condition is most of the time. In car terms, your pre-existing condition is that you just had a car crash. That's your pre-existing car's condition, or your car's pre-existing condition. Now you'll buy the insurance. That's absurd. That would end all insurance. That's not what insurance is. Insurance is you don't know what will happen. So while you don't need the insurance, you are paying in for the day that you need it. That's the problem with the whole notion of the pre-existing issue. People think, people whose kid is born with epilepsy, that's a pre-existing condition, which it really is. They can't get insurance. That's a tiny number of Americans, and that is a moral issue that must be addressed. There must be a way for those people to have insurance. But the vast majority of people, when we talk about pre-existing condition, it means after I get sick, I'll buy the insurance. Get it? Is that right? Of course not. That ends the possibility of insurance companies existing. And that's why they pull out of markets. Had the bill not been passed by the Republicans, under Obamacare, the increasingly single insurance company working there. For I don't know why Iowa, but that's what was projected. So I don't have much more to say. I just want you to understand why it's a real issue, this pre-existing condition issue. that it's not a matter of greedy Republicans who don't care about people who have epilepsy or are born with some other illness. No, not at all. It is about the vast majority of people who won't buy insurance till they get sick. But that's not insurance. That's just a token that you put in the meter to absolve yourself. It's like putting in a dime in the parking meter or a quarter in the parking meter after the meter maid showed up. It doesn't work like that. Your car has to have had the meter paid before the meter maid showed up. Is that clear, guys? Clarity is very important. But, you're not allowed to think this way because Jimmy Kimmel will go on TV and totally understandably cry about his child who needed surgery. What parent's not going to cry about their child needing surgery? But that's not the way to think clearly about an issue. That's the way to emote clearly. It's not the same. And emotions do not policy make. Emotions are a wonderful thing if they don't dominate people's thinking. All right, are we good, guys? All right, one more. See, this, unlike cigars, you got to keep puffing, or it goes out. By the way, that is a pipe lighter. I love all this paraphernalia stuff. I love it. By the way, if you haven't noticed, I love life. My belief is enjoy as much as you can. Well, I didn't say have as much fun as I think also have as much fun as you can, but you should read my chapter on the difference between fun and happiness in my book on happiness. It's called Happiness is a Serious Problem. I don't care if you buy it used. Just read it. It's not that much new, but if you get it used and you read it, I'm happy. Because it was meant to touch people's lives. There's a big difference between fun and happiness. Fun is what you experience during an act. Happiness is what you experience afterwards. Fun is great, but it doesn't make you happy. Okay, I'll talk about that another time. Now, by the way, I don't see these questions in advance. Just want you to know. You send them in, I read them. Which means there might be some I might have to say, I don't know. Or, not now. Or, well, I can go on forever. Okay. Clayton Zirkle, are we now giving last names?
Yeah.
I like that name, Clayton Zirkle. I love names. Clayton Zirkle would be on my list of favorite names. By the way, you know my all-time favorite name? I mean real names, not names. I make up names. But my all-time favorite real name? Truxton Umstead. Oh, no, that is. And my second favorite was the U.S. ambassador to the Dominican Republic sometime, near the third quarter of the 20th century. His name was Phelps. I always have wondered what his parents were thinking. Gee, honey, what will we name Phelps Jr.? Phelps, honey. But then, sweetheart, he'll be Phelps. The kids will make fun of him. Phelps it is. Okay. Man clearly succeeded. Ambassador, Dominican Republic, among other things. Okay. Oh, I love this one. Clayton Zirkle, you are my man. Dennis, what's the difference between knowledge and wisdom? Okie dokie. Ready? Knowledge, I can give you a lot of answers. Knowledge is what your computer has. Google has knowledge, immense amount of knowledge. It has no wisdom. Google cannot answer the question, what does it all mean? What is it all about? It's like science. Science has knowledge, but no wisdom. You could know all there is to know. Well, there's no such thing. You could know a vast amount about physics or biology or chemistry. But that doesn't tell you anything about what is the meaning of life, what is the purpose of life, what is good, what is evil. Wisdom are the lessons of life. Knowledge is simply knowledge. And there's just so many other examples here. I always give this example when I start my Ultimate Issues Hour on my third hour Tuesday on my radio show. So I speak about why it's important to have deep thoughts about ultimate issues and not just have knowledge. Knowledge is having a map. You have a map and you see every street, every avenue, every highway. But the map doesn't tell you where you should go. It gives you no destination. It only gives you the knowledge of how to get to the destination. The destination is wisdom. The map has knowledge. Am I clear on that, guys? We good? Next. Jason Kreisky. I hope I pronounced your name right. Kryske. Dennis, how do Judaism and Christianity view morality differently, or do they have the same view of right and wrong? They're very, very close. That's why we speak of Judeo-Christian values. We don't speak of Judeo-Christian theology. They have different beliefs, obviously. Christianity has the Trinity. Judaism does not believe in the Trinity. All right, that's clear. But in terms of morals, first of all, they both emanate from the Old Testament. Christianity is as affirmative of the Old Testament as Judaism is. It's true Christianity has a testament that the Jews do not regard as the Word of God, the New Testament. But the basic moral values, the Ten Commandments, are shared, as an example. And that's why so many Christians have viewed tens of millions of my videos on the Ten Commandments. I wish you would see it, especially if you're secular. So they're largely similar on moral values. That's why it is evangelical Christians who syndicate my radio show. Here I am, a religious Jew, and evangelical Christians give me the forum to broadcast because we share virtually identical values. That's why. So it's a beautiful thing. Now, having said that, if you're curious, and you probably are, I will give you a couple of examples of where they would differ, at least in theory. I'm not sure Jews and Christians would differ as much as pure Judaism and pure Christianity on this issue, but I'll give you one example. Divorce. Judaism accepts divorce more than, let's say, Jesus did, obviously. So depending on the Christian, some Christians truly oppose any divorce. And, the Catholic Church does not, if you were married in the Catholic Church, you cannot remarry in the Catholic Church unless unless the marriage is annulled, meaning you never really were married, or if one person is widowed, then you're allowed to remarry, but not after a divorce. In Judaism, after a divorce, you can remarry. And I know Christians have called my show, and I love when they do, obviously, because I love talking about religion. I love it. So they tell me, well, Dennis, doesn't it say in the Old Testament, and it does, God hates divorce? One of the prophets, I don't remember which prophet. And yes, it's true. God hates divorce. God hates a lot of things. God hates a war. But sometimes war is necessary, and sometimes divorce is necessary. I'll give you one more example of where they might differ. But remember, 99% they don't differ on what's right and what's wrong, etc. But here is one other example. And what was it again? What was it? I gave you divorce. And God, this rarely happens to me, but I'm so relaxed smoking my pipe in my room. Let me think. Oh, yes, lust. Jesus says, whoever lusts after another woman, it is as if he has committed adultery with his heart. And Judaism would not say something like that, because Judaism is much more behavior-oriented than thought-oriented. There are very few thought sins in the Old Testament. The only one I can think of, actually, is Do not covet what your neighbor owns. The 10th commandment. I can't think of another thought commandment. And there were 613 commandments in the first 5 books, where all the commandments are to be found. So that would be just another example. Okay. Antonio Abreu asks, Dennis, do you believe prostitution should be legal or illegal? Do you believe it's immoral? What does the Torah say about it? Whoa. The Torah, it's interesting that this is the question following the lust question. There's an interesting thing in the Torah, and the Old Torah is the first 5 books. And the whole Old Testament, prostitutes don't get a bad rap. Rahab, the prostitute, is the one who saves the whole Jewish people when they invade Canaan, the Holy Land. The spies are, the Israelite spies are hidden by a prostitute. Now, if God had a really, really, really negative view of prostitutes, why would he have chosen a prostitute to save the Jews and hide the spies? There's a whole host of prostitutes. I think it's Hosea who's told to marry one. Now, prostitution is not regarded as a wonderful thing, don't get me wrong, but the prostitute is not a villain. The prostitute is not a murderer. The prostitute is not a bank robber. The prostitute is not a rapist. Those are evil. Prostitute is a sin, but it's not an evil. And that's a very important distinction that is very rarely made, and not everybody agrees with me. But whether you agree with me or not, it's worth thinking about. So that's how I would, in a nutshell, answer it. Should it be legal? I'm torn. I'm totally torn on this issue. There are not many issues that I'm truly, truly torn. On the one hand, who is society to tell adults what they can do? I mean, for example, here's the irony. You'll have feminists who say that a woman should be free to do what she wants with her own body. So therefore, there should be no laws about abortion. But of course, it's a disingenuous argument, because the baby, or whatever, the fetus, call it whatever you want, is not her body. It's in her body. Nobody argues about allowing a woman to do what she wants with her own body. You want to tattoo your face? You can tattoo your face. You want to have a silicone breast implant? You can. But the irony is the feminists came out against silicone breast implants. But so they said the woman really can't do what she wants with her own body. And likewise, a lot of feminists are against legalized prostitution. And that's a woman doing what she wants with her own body. So I am largely, not entirely, a libertarian in these matters. Just leave people alone unless what they're doing is evil. So, in other words, unless it harms another. Now you can argue, well, it does harm. It's a very complex question. So I'm torn in, that's the direction of legalizing it. The one reason, literally the only reason I am for not legalizing it, is that I think a vast number of young women would enter it. These are not financially easy times. It's a quote-unquote easy way to make money, and I don't want to see vast numbers of young women enter that profession, as it were. So I am torn. What I would like to see is, unless a pimp or prostitute, first of all, if women are being trafficked, that's evil. But the issue there is the trafficking. That has to be shut down. Minors, it's a non-issue. It has to be shut down. But if a 25-year-old woman has a high-class call girl group, and for her $1,000 a night, well, I don't know what the going rate is, but that sounds expensive to me. I don't think the police need to stop it. So I'm not for legalizing it. On the other hand, I don't want to prosecute it unless it's harming the society. I was just in Seattle, and they told me that at strip clubs, there's a law you can't be within 4 feet of the dancer. Well, this is big liberal Seattle. Well, what kind of law is that? Well, who's getting hurt? I can't. It's unbelievable to me. These laws. It's in so many areas. This is a less free country than I grew up in. But anyway, that's my answer. Long answer, short question. Samuel Dahl, Dahl, asks, Dennis, what was the hardest part of being a teenager for you? Well, I can tell you, it's amazing. Like every question comes to the same answer. A lack of girls. What am I going to tell you? It's tough to be a teenage boy. Not today, maybe not. Well, the sexual tension in an adolescent boy, which doesn't really go away till about the age of 112, that's a side matter, was a hard part. Another hard part was I cared about big issues from a very, very early age. I cared about good and evil. And, I always had friends, but it was hard to find friends, girlfriends or boyfriends, who cared about the big issues that I cared about. Thank God I did. And starting in high school, always had unbelievably close male friends, which has been a major part of my happiness. I remember, though, in my 20s, let's say I'd meet a girl somewhere, and, we'd start talking, and, I had nothing to say about my favorite movie or my favorite band. My favorite band was probably the one Beethoven conducted in Vienna in 1806. So that didn't help. She'd mention some popular group, and I go, who? And she, yeah, the Who. I go, it's like, who's on first? The Who? I said Who. That's what I asked. The Who? You like the Who? Anyway, when was the Who anyway? What years was the Who? I think that was later. Oh, yeah, so be about right. But anyway, I had no idea. And, it really got funny, actually, when, I was lecturing in my 20s already on serious subjects. So I remember once I was attracted to a girl. I don't think it was at a bar. It was, a restaurant, bookstore. Bookstores were stores that sold books. Physical stores, just for those of you who only know Amazon. And so, what do you do? I go, I speak. Oh, really? You're a speaker? What do you speak on? I go, well, I speak on ethical monotheism. Well, that was not exactly a great pickup line. I cared about the big issues, and it was not my teenage years, my graduate school years, and my early 20s. I really did see myself as alone, because I couldn't stand what was happening on my campus, where kids were taking over dean's offices, president's offices, just like today. Same leftist kids. And I felt like I was sort of a odd outlier. Okie doke. Greg Roberge asks, Dennis, do you have any leftist friends or relatives? If so, how do those conversations go? Do politics get in the way? I have liberal relatives. Yes. Many. Most. All. Now that I think of it, I think all. And we love each other. But again, they're not leftist, they're liberal. Sometimes one I can think of would take some leftist views, and I love him too. And, thank God we all know that there are other values in life, like the beauty of family. And so, keep it like that. But for friends, I tend to want friends who share my values. I argue these issues for a living. I don't want to then go to dinner and argue again. And I don't want to hide myself. I want to be able to, this is what I believe, this is who I am, and share it with the people that are I'm intimately involved with. Pete Moyer asks, Dennis, what are some issues, political, social, religious, where your views have changed over time? Well, I'm asked that often, and every time I have to think it through. Basic, fundamental moral issues of life, I have pretty been consistent. For example, I was always for capital punishment. I never understood why people thought no matter how many people you torture and murder, you have a right to live. You rape a 7-year-old and then strangle her. You have a right to live. I don't understand that view, frankly. And I've always felt that way. I've always cared about fighting evil. That's the biggest thing in my life. So these things haven't changed. The biggest single change, I think, is that and I'll tell you exactly when it happened. Ronald Reagan did it. When Ronald Reagan said, government is not the solution, it is the problem, it was the clouds dissipated. The sun shone through. I now realized that's correct. And that's when I went from Democrat to Republican. That's right. The bigger the government, these are my phrases, the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. The bigger the government, the more the corruption. The bigger the government, the more the lobbyists. Big government is a bad thing, period. Does government do anything good? Of course it does. Of course. But it's so much bigger than the founders of America founded America to be. It's the only country in world history founded to have limited government. It's the founders understood you can't have liberty and big government. America's been a much freer country than Europe as a result. Now, European countries are free compared to much of the rest of the world. I understand that. But there's much more free speech in the United States than there is in Europe. Big government is a terrible thing. It has a terribly debilitating impact on the society, and it makes people dependent on it. Those who advocate big government are like drug dealers, and the drug they're dealing is free things. The addiction to free things is harder to break than the addiction to heroin. Cancel. Okay, here we go. Final question from Tuan Kai Truong from Vietnam. That's the beauty of these things. People all over the world watch and listen. By the way, before I even look at your question, Tuan, I've been to 130 countries. People ask me what are my favorite places. Vietnam is one of my favorite places. The Vietnamese people are among the most dynamic people that I have ever met. Made a very deep impact on me, my visit to Vietnam. What a tragedy that you had communism. It breaks my heart. The number of Vietnamese who died for that thug Ho Chi Minh. Now you have capitalism somewhat. So what did all those Vietnamese die for? For communism? How many Vietnamese died? 1 million? 2 million? I don't know how many. And then suffered in a police state for decades for the idiocy, the vile idiocy called communism. That's why you should all watch my video at PragerU this week. And anytime you're watching this past this week, obviously all the PragerU videos stay up. Why isn't communism as hated as Nazism? Only killed about 100 million people. talking civilians, not wartime. What's your question? Dennis, how did you come to capitalism? What is your view of the Vietnam War and the North Vietnamese communists? That's awesome. Well, now you know my view. They wasted the great Vietnamese people, their freedom and their lives. And the proof is today. What did you die for there? For what? They've abandoned communism because it's an idiotic doctrine believed by intellectuals. Ho Chi Minh studied in France. They pick up these moronic ideas from European leftists and then spread them around the world. Pol Pot, the exterminator of a third of the Cambodian people, he studied at the Sorbonne in France. How did I come to capitalism? Because I actually believe, A, in freedom. Capitalism is another word for free markets. People should be economically free, like free in every other way. Excuse me. And because it's the only way to lift people out of poverty. Socialism hasn't lifted 10 people out of poverty. Capitalism has lifted billions out of poverty. You know what socialism does? It spends the money that capitalism creates. That's all it does. So with that, from the Prager house, I will hopefully see you next week and remind you to visit Prager University. Oh, here's a little reminder, by the way. I have a lot of lives. I love life, I told you. I have the great honor of conducting on August 16th at one of the biggest concert halls in America, the Walt Disney Concert Hall. I'll be conducting the Santa Monica Symphony Orchestra. Any of you who want to come to L.A. Should mark that date down. You can get tickets through the Walt Disney Hall. And I will be explaining, I will be conducting, and then I will be explaining how a symphony's put together, and then interviewing the players, and it'll be a blast. And then the second half of the program, the great conductor, the permanent conductor, I'm just doing this time. I've conducted in the past, but the permanent conductor of the Santa Monica Symphony will conduct Beethoven's Fifth, the most popular symphony ever written. And until next week, thank you so much for watching.